This is our news, the weekend edition, and on the broadcast tonight, another triple murder weekend as police conduct investigations into 2 overnight fatal shootings here in the capital. Plus, the Christian Council president advises government to listen to protesters. And the financial secretary breaks down why the VAT increase is necessary.
Our news is brought to you by Alive.
Good evening, I'm Andrew Knowles, and thanks so much for joining us. Topping the news on this Father's Day, police are investigating 2 more overnight murders here in the capital, which occurred just hours apart. Both incidents appear to be armed robberies and come on the heels of Saturday morning's homicide on Cricket Island Street. That makes it the second consecutive triple homicide weekend. And unfortunately for one family, this latest murder comes on a day that's meant to celebrate fathers. A business owner was robbed and killed as he was leaving his business establishment in Western New Providence early Sunday morning. The incident happened just outside Plantation Bar and Grill on West Bay Street shortly before 1 a.m. as the victim was already in his vehicle and preparing to leave.
Information received is that the male had just left an establishment when he was approached by an unknown gunman who demanded cash, and he was subsequently shot.
While police have not released the identity of the victim, our news can confirm that he is Noel Cartwright, the owner of Plantation Bar and Grill. Now, when officers responded to the scene, they met Cartwright's body inside the vehicle, which appears to have crashed into an iron fence. EMS personnel pronounced him dead on the scene. And with this incident happening in Western New Providence, just a stone's throw away from Caves Heights, police say it's an isolated case.
Well, the police still have officers on patrol and throughout the island. And I feel like people are safe. It's just a random case.
But only hours earlier, the body of another homicide victim was being carried down a staircase from a clothing store located in a 2-story building on Faith Avenue and St. Vincent Road.
What we can tell you so far is that, from our information, is that a lone gunman entered the store. A struggle ensued between him and an employee, or who appears to be an employee of the store. The gunman shot the employee and then ran from this area.
Now, attempts to revive the male employee were unsuccessful and he was pronounced dead in the store. Understandably, it was a hard pill to swallow for this woman on the scene. There was a heavy police presence in the area, with even members of the Royal Bahamas Defense Force dressed in army fatigues and armed with rifles there to assist. Despite yet another violent weekend, police maintain Bahamians have no reason to feel unsafe.
Please do not be afraid. We understand that there is a need to be afraid, but do not be afraid. We have officers in all areas of New Providence who have started in operation just last evening. So we do have officers in the Camp Road area, the Fox Hill area, Baintown area, and of course we had officers also in this area. But then, as you can see, this is very isolated. It's off the street. So even officers patrolling would not have seen as much.
These latest incidents bring the country's murder count to 50 for the year. In other news this evening, on the heels of a march that saw hundreds of protesters demanding government to pump the brakes on its planned tax hikes, and the Christian Council president says the chief lawmakers should take note. Our Jared Higgs has more.
Christian Council President Bishop Delton Fernandez says he believes the protests against government's planned tax increases sent a strong message that he hopes the country's leaders are paying attention to.
Well, anytime there is that type of rallying, which is not normal for the Bahamas, maybe we've had 3 successful ones, that one yesterday being counted as one, that whenever the people speak out like that, governments ought to listen. And it is my hope that no matter how you spin the turnout, people came out and they had something to say.
Several hundred people attended the march, which began at Southern Recreation Grounds and ended in Rawson Square. There were several heated moments during the protest, including the arrest of a man for throwing water on Minister of Transport Frankie Campbell, an incident that Our News caught on camera. The chaos continued when Minister of National Security Marvin Dames had to be escorted from the House of Assembly under heavy police guard as protesters chased him down Bay Street.
It's always the wrong approach to wet up or troll or chase or use vulgarity. You lose the essence of what you're trying to do. If it's a peaceful protest, people take it for what it is and they listen and want to hear what it is. When it gets rowdy, people characterize as a bunch of thugs trying to take over downtown and do these kind of things. It is my hope that leadership will pause and kind of randomly select some people that they would sit down and talk to and really hear the cry of the people.
Fernando is one of several critics of government's planned increase in value-added tax from 7.5% to 12%. He says government should consider a rate of 10%, but his preference was income tax with a sliding scale.
What we're saying is you got to fix the system first before you tax the people. It is a consumption big tax that doesn't take into account that you are making more than me. You make $1,000, I make $200. We consume about $100. $12 is nothing to you. $12 is lunch and school lunch and gas to me. And so is that fair? If I'm paying exactly what you're paying, you may consider it fair. But to me, it's the world. To you, it's nothing. Income tax should have been considered. Not that we are for any kind of taxation, but income tax. But these were conversations to have before you implement it.
Reporting for Our News Weekend, I'm Jared Higgs.
Well, the increase in VAT is just under 2 weeks away, and it's a move that many say they're not prepared for. Now, despite the pushback, the government does not seem to be relenting, with Financial Secretary Marlon Johnson speaking out and defending the government's decision. We get that story tonight from our Gillian Gray.
The proposed increase in value-added tax to 12% has received widespread opposition. This week, hundreds of protesters stormed Rawson Square to voice their frustration. Financial Secretary Marlon Johnson said the VAT hike may not be a popular move, but it's a necessary one.
The government could have taken the position and could have gone to 10% because 10% seemed more palatable, but all that would have meant is that we would have had to borrow $400 million. And then when you borrow $400 million, your interest rates spike again, and you take in tax dollars only to pay interest. Anything less than 12% would have only postponed the problem, wouldn't have fixed it. And at some point, this day of reckoning would have come.
Many have questioned why there was no public consultation before the decision was made, arguing that there could have been other options to increase government revenue. Johnson chalked their options up to either borrowing, ignoring existing debt, or sending civil servants home, which was not the way the government wanted to go.
But the responsible thing, in the view of the government, to do would be to say, listen, let's face it, that is an amount that is necessary. It puts us on a firm footing, and it really sets up the economy for medium and long-term sustainability and growth, and avoids the crash that we have seen in other jurisdictions.
The business community fears the VAT hike will affect how people spend their money, thus hurt the economy. Johnson admitted that they do expect it to affect the economy. However, he said none of their models project a recession or a slowdown in growth. In fact, he said when VAT was first implemented under the former administration, the economy improved and household expenditure grew.
When the government gets these increased receipts, it spends the money right away, and it spends the money back in the economy because, fortunately for us, we owed a lot of this money to our own vendors and our own selves. In other countries who face in this sort of situation when they make these significant adjustments, the tax receipts goes largely to pay off foreign debt. And so that money is pulled out of the economy. So yes, individuals, without question, will see their disposable income fall by some measure, but that will be mitigated by the fact that that money going into a government that will have to go and pay off these lunch vendors who will now have their money more timely and be able to conduct business in a more timely way.
Accountability has been a tagline for the Minnis administration, and Johnson says they will be ensuring that transparency is applied to accounting for the revenue from VAT.
In a few days, we will be publishing what's called the Citizen's Guide to the Budget. And that really is to take the budget and break it down into layman terms so people can understand and see. The government, the DPM, has gone on record as saying that right now we only produce 2 reports, a midterm report and then a report at the end of the year, that will increase the quarterly budget. So that persons will get a chance to have a quarterly statement from the government. Most importantly though, is that the government would have already circulated and intends to pass shortly the fiscal responsibility legislation. And what that will do, it will actually set deficit and debt targets and spending targets that the government has to enunciate. And it will create a fiscal council who will be able to get more of the detailed information from Ministry of Finance as an independent body to hold the government in check.
Reporting for Our News Weekend, I'm Jillian Gray.
All right, thanks a lot, Jillian. And we will take our first break here. But still ahead tonight, the Environment Minister outlines steps government is taking to address global warming. And Atlantis releases another manta ray into the Atlantic. That's coming up when Our News returns.